Okay, so nobody's getting the truth from the mainstream media, folks. It's well past time to open your eyes, your ears, and your mind. Do your own research because something isn't right here. And if you can't see that, you are not paying attention, folks.
It's the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. Now that's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
The important message that we need Australians to get vaccinated as quickly as possible. In line with that, I do encourage all Australians to please go and book your vaccinations as soon as you can if you haven't already done so.
Emma, get away!
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Okay, we need to stand up against this tyranny, folks. Stop giving away your freedoms and liberties, because the more you give up, the more these people will take until you have absolutely nothing left. That's their agenda.
It's all right, guys. I'm in the studio on my own, but I have got SG with me, so that's a great thing. He's in as admin. It's the only way we can get him in this morning. So, yeah, maybe he can help me out in here. He does a lot of these things too. But anyway, guys, that's, we've gone through a whole hassle to get SG in here this morning. A bit the same as Jan Halper last night, guys. We know what these guys are coming at. They're
When they hit us this hard, we certainly know we are right over the hot zone of the target. Welcome back. We can see you now.
Thanks, SG, mate. I tell you what, if this was my job, I'd just give it up, mate. I tell you, if I was getting paid for this, I wouldn't put up with this shit, but we're fighting for nothing, so that's cool, SG. How are you, mate? I think we're in and clean now, so ASIO's working overtime on the weekends, SG.
It is a fun time trying to cyberproof some of our apparatus in the middle of an information war. I have to admit that. Teaches us to be adaptive.
Mate. Anyway, listen, SG, we've got a heap going on. The people are going to want to hear from you, but just a couple of things. We got the Dutch. Let's just go over a couple of things and then hit a conversation, mate. But we got the Dutch scientists saying we got 35 million dead. I would believe that figure's probably bigger than that. And as we know, in the next little period, SG, that figure is going to grow. We are seeing sickness everywhere. We got the National Guard over in New York. We've been told the Democrats have had some phones seized and things like that a couple of days ago. Maybe you can tell us about that. We've got Japanese links to COVID, to 201 dangerous diseases. And to finish it off, in Australia here, we've been asked to stop eating meat because we just can't eat meat, SG. That's going to be going out of our lifestyle. So, mate, there's a little bit of an overview on what's happening. So, yeah, where are we, Blake? Let's have a chat.
You know, Dave, it's very interesting. We've met on air, I think, for the first time coming up on a year and a half, maybe just over a year and a half ago. And we've watched a transition happen inside of the NATO Western world that I can remember talking about on this show and on other Australian and New Zealand broadcasts as early 2023. We're finally witnessing a lot of that, coming to pass here in the world. Conspiracy analysts are being proven right at a record pace at this point. And so I would say in that regards, we are winning the information war, which is the first step to winning the kinetic war. You have to win the propaganda campaign, the minds and the hearts, the mentality of the peoples and the people groups that are involved in the conflict before they can pull together as a cohesive unit and then tackle the kinetic portion. And I think the kinetic portion is nigh in the wings. President Trump told us on the 9th of June that it was his hope the U.S. military revolts at the voting booth. This is a man who checks every single syllable before it flies from his lips, understanding that every media outlet in the entirety of the world is hanging on the words that this man says. There's a considerable portion of the world, however silent they are about it, that believes and knows President Trump is holding authority, or at the very least, an advisement role for extraordinarily high levels of U.S. military command and U.S. military operations. So for him to say something along those lines gives me great encouragement, because I think that we're seeing the setup built out in the present day and time for public justification, or maybe a better way to say it is the generation of public appetite and acceptance of some sort of military revolt to put a stop to the corruption. The adage goes, so goes the United States, so goes the world. I think we've certainly seen that in the last 4 years. If we want to, look at this period longitudinally, we could take it back a number of decades. But fundamentally, going back to 2020, we had China, Western Europe, and the United States in the first 3 months of the year 2020, really taking to the forefront of the tip of the mind, if you will, in all of the population groups in those areas. And we've witnessed the discussion around election integrity, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, even in some regards, really spawning off of the policies undertaken by various governmental factions at all levels, both state and federal and even local, in North America and Western Europe and in Australia in that period of time. So now we've got essentially this premise, or a cycle fulfilling itself, where it's like 2016 all over again. We're facing down the corrupt component of the DOJ, for example, in the United States. We're facing down the corrupt component of the deep state globalist machine. But what is different between then and now, and why this is extremely crucial, and why I say that we're winning this information war, is that people are consciously aware of what's happening to their free and fair process in real time. People are aware of what's going on with attempted biological agents being spawned off again. People are aware that the elections don't mean anything if you're able to heist ballots. People are aware that national borders and issues like national borders and a whole host of other, quote, humanitarian issues are actually just issues for the opposite reasons and not humanitarian in nature whatsoever. So in this period of time that we've gone on from June to now of this year, and what I believe will carry us through from June to that early November season, we know that President Trump has told us at least a few different times that a 1929 style event is to be expected, a complete correction. You could call it a crash, perhaps, certainly a downturn in North American and Western world markets. He hinted just in the last 48 hours that the U.S. dollar is approaching the point where the value bubble worldwide in currency markets is going to force itself into a long cascading pop. We understand that those events can easily be ignited by what's happening in China, what's happening out of Pyongyang. Russian President Putin has spent the last 3 months touring a number of Far East and Central Asian nations. These are nations that have vast amounts of wealth and a very long history going back to the time pre-Genghis Khan, with the hoarding of the Luciferian artifacts, the Luciferian Kabbalistic monies, and also, at least with respect to Mongolia, has played host to one of the dragon families that went into exile when the Ming dynasty was overthrown. So looking at what's happening, we are winning this particular conflict. But just as we've talked about on this broadcast, because the Hydra is in our bedroom, in our living room, in the NATO and former Commonwealth realms, we are going to be last to the celebration table. But that table is not long in the wings.
Yeah, well, look, I've been talking and trying to get people under the understanding, SG, that we have done an absolute remarkable job, us Patriots. These guys have never lost. They don't know how to taste defeat because they never have. For 6,000 years now or whatever, they've been running the show. And we've actually got to a time where we, the Patriots, can actually see that we're going to tip this scale. Now, that makes these guys very, very dangerous for the simple reason that they've never tasted defeat and they don't want to taste defeat, SG. So, with the school shooting just the other day in America, they're trying to get your guns. Obviously, we know that. Some more false flags, CIA operatives. These guys are running scared a little bit, I think, SG. And we're looking at the art of war here. And what we're looking at is, these guys look like they're strong because they're throwing everything at us. But in the art of war, we know when someone looks strong, they're looking strong because they're weak. We're sitting here, maybe not looking too good, but in actual fact, we know we're strong and we know we're coming at this guy. Now, what we've got here, as I said, is a team that's never been defeated before, SG. So take us into that. These guys just they've never tasted defeat in all of history. Never tasted defeat. They have had the upper hand all the way. So what do you think these guys are thinking right now? Where we got these guys?
Well, President Trump himself, I think, gave us an indication of where we've got them. He put out a truth post. I want to say it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago now, Guru, where he explicitly stated that if anyone was found cheating in the upcoming election in the United States, anyone was the terminology used, for any reason, that they would be punished to the fullest extent of the law. And so if you have a coordinated RICO criminal enterprise operating as an insurgency to overthrow the Constitution, what is the lawful punishment? I submit that rhetorically for people out there to reflect upon that. So President Trump is telling us that we are in, I think, the gauntlet here where those individuals who are officially leaderless at this point, and many of whom may understand to some varying degree that their security measures and their security blankets and insurance policies are not going to last forever and that something is clearly afoot. This is the period where they get the opportunity to choose right from wrong. I think this is that merciful period, sort of an expression of Almighty God, if you will, of justice here in the world, the opportunity to indemnify, the opportunity to cure, to come back and say, no, actually, I don't want to be on the wrong side of history, or I don't want to be caught up in something that is tantamount to an overthrow and an act of treason against the Constitution for the Republic. At the same time, however, justice must be dispassionate, blind, and objective. And so as we move forward, you're going to see, I think, increasing desperation from that leaderless class of mules And mules can mean anything from a community level official, a mover with transportation assistance, a paid nonprofit employee, all of the way up to a politician staffer, an aide. All of these individuals would qualify in a criminal enterprise as mules. And those mules that choose not to cure or that choose to ignore the overtures that have been made and the merciful time that has been extended here in this process and continue to commit the criminality moving forward, it's going to be a very unfortunate end for them before this process is over. President Trump is telling us that there's a great American fair for more than a year coming up in 2025 and moving into 2026, culminating at Independence Day of 2026. That kind of an event would take literal months and years just in logistical planning alone. So understanding that that's the plan, there is clearly going to be an unprecedented sequence of events from now till November and from November until Memorial Day of 2025, where we could see a tremendous amount of corruption dispensed with in an expanded, lawful, tribunalistic style fashion. That's not to say that we won't have civilian courts involved. I think they do need to have some amount of adjudication and to bring the record forward in all of our nations. But fundamentally, we are going to see public military tribunals at some level in some form and fashion. And that is another Truth Social post from President Trump himself, August the 27th of this year.
Well, talking to Jan last night, she's totally convinced that these tribunals have been going on, and you've located the ships, SG. We've spoken on that before. This South Pacific Rim that we're talking about here now, what's happened in Australia, SG? And I suppose you'd be quite aware of this, and we're sort of looking for maybe what could be going on here. We've had 3 stealth bombers turn up at Amberley, up in Queensland, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Then these bombers have took a run across to Darwin, and we got some pretty insane sort of stuff and movement going on over here in Australia. Now, talking behind the scenes, as we do with Kaz and, me, in the show before we get out live on air, we throw around a lot of scenarios. Now, can you tell us why these stealth bombers could be here? These are older sort of stealth bombers. I believe they're, around 2019 or something like that, maybe a bit earlier, SG, but would these be put here for a sacrifice to actually, from NATO to actually start this World War III? Do we need some bombers like this in this area to go out and kick something off in this South Pacific Rim? What's your view on that?
It's a really fascinating development, not one that I'd seen yet, Guru, come across my desk. But fundamentally, I think it's very interesting that we should see stealth bombers from the United States military arsenal showing up there. This is not a cheap piece of equipment, both to operate and to build. They are only built to carry significant warheads, weapons of war that you would expect to be battle enders or battle beginners. We're talking very large conventional weapons, tactical nuclear weapons by the dozens can be fitted into these airframes. These are large aircraft, difficult to track. So it's very possible that you've got a scenario there to generate a public narrative. I think it's more likely that we have bait being put out for mercenaries and the intelligence community that may still wish to try and cause us radioactive harm along the Pacific Rim. Something like stealing or infiltrating and damaging stealth bombers or any of the weaponry that would be associated and probably stocked with or on board something like a stealth bomber. That's a pretty significant target. That's a huge block of cheese if we want to utilize the comparison. So I could see that working in both directions. I find it really fascinating, though, that that's the case happening at the same time that we've seen just in the last few weeks the conclusion of, I believe it was Predators Run 2024, which was a joint force military exercise discussing rapid force deployment with the aim of the exercise was to hone rapid force deployment from the U.S. Marine Corps base in Camp Pendleton, California, directly to the Australian mainland. And we saw joint force task forces engaged in that exercise just in the last, 2 to 4 weeks. So the fact that you've got that overlap, and we also have Marine Corps presence from the U.S. Marine Corps in Indonesia and in the Philippines at the present time, both of which are significant storehouses for wealth and occultic artifacts. This tells me, again, that we're pushing that needle forward in the irregular warfare capacity. And at the same time, we are sort of drawing out or attempting to draw out whatever hidden assets they might have left. Espionage sleepers are very good at what they do. They're very patient. They stay silent for years, sometimes for decades. So we have to give them, I think, every available opportunity to come out and get squished under the light.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we didn't know how to throw that one around. We thought it was quite amazing that we had 3 stealth bombers out here. And then, we've actually got footage of them. I will get it over to you, actually, SG. We got footage of these things flying across the country, heading up to Darwin, all 3 of them, So, and we got, I think, F-18s either side of them or something like that, or 35s. I'm not a real plane person, but obviously they were escorted up to Darwin and, brought into our base up there. Now, we all know that the Darwin base has been expanded. There's new runways gone in up there. This Pacific Rim seems to be NATO's little playground, like we know, China's not our big threat here, guys. Okay. Russia's not our big threat. Okay. Our big threat is actually the American corporation and its NATO partners, which we have nothing to do with, which again, the North, American Treaty, it is nothing to do with Australia. Nothing to do. We're not even in the Northern Hemisphere unless we find out this world is, quite different to what we may believe. And we are actually pinned up in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, I don't know. We got to wait until we get some more information on that because we got flat Earth, round Earth, pie Earth, terranean, well, what do we call them? Anyway.
Terrariums.
Terrariums. That's it. Terrarium Earth. We got all these things that we don't really know yet, guys. So again, have we been sucked in? Are we part of the North American Treaty Organization? I don't really know, but NATO really seems to be playing up. And I think I watch a bit of Colonel Towner, and she goes into the Gladio, Operation Gladio, and how they started leaving mercenary groups in these different countries to actually get the job done. And I do believe a lot of these islands and that we're talking about up in this Pacific Rim were well infiltrated a long time ago with mercenary groups to actually get these people, under control. And we know that these islands have been used for very nefarious things. SG, you've told us about that. You've located and named a few more, and we've our people have obviously gone in digging and had a look there. And we know that up at the the Marianas and different places that we've got all these different things going on. So have you got an update on where we are as an alliance side in this this arm wrestle that we've got in this Pacific Rim?
Actually, that's a pretty adept and astute question for where we're at right now, Dave. This is the 2-year anniversary this month of Commander-in-Chief Trump's verbal public approval for the Chinese-Taiwan reunification campaign. It came at a Pennsylvania rally, the same rally where President Trump displayed for the first time the Black Star U.S. military flag. So where we've got right now, I think, is very, very interesting. We've been expecting this event to spin off for a long time. But in the investigative process, with all eyes upon that part of the world, we have, I think, educated ourselves to a huge degree in the online Patriot community about just how interconnected the Pacific Rim nations and the worldwide finance and supply chain operations and constructs really truly are. When this campaign in the Pacific begins, and we're going to see at least localized military conflict in 3 or 4 separate theaters when we factor in the Korean Peninsula as also a reunification adventure before us, and I utilize that sort of tongue-in-cheek. I don't want to make too much levity of the situation, but when these series of skirmishes and campaigns kick off, you're going to see, I think, pretty immediately a downturn in North American and Western European financial markets and a crushing blow given to the North American NASDAQ. The NASDAQ underpins the main Silicon Valley giants here in North American and American financial markets. I think it's composed of the 7 big tech giants, tech organizations, and a number of others, but that particular index underpins a huge portion of what continues to support and prop up the S&P 500. And the S&P is integrally linked to the same metrics and matrices that are utilized to govern the Dow and how the Dow is measured. So the events happening in the Pacific, I cannot imagine, are long in the wings. We've seen China very recently talking about Taiwan yet again releasing a statement that Taiwan is ancestrally a Chinese state. This is culturally true, regardless of the academic brainwashing that all of us have been exposed to over the last 60 to 85 years. Taiwan and the island of Taiwan has always been a native Chinese island. Granted, it's sort of like Texas being a sub-ethos of the American culture in the same fashion that the Taiwanese ethos is a sub-ethos, if you will, of the Chinese culture and the Chinese heritage. But fundamentally, they have always viewed themselves the same until the Rothschild central banking machine and the American military machine came along in the early 1900s, and especially after the Second World War. The same is true of the activities that we're currently seeing on the Korean Peninsula. Pyongyang has now sent more than 4,000 balloons in the last 12 months over the 38th parallel border, the demilitarized zone. These balloons are full of excrement, trash, garbage, fecal matter, things of that nature. So this is psychological warfare that's being pretty obviously waged. It's the literal crap storm being foreshadowed and foretold by Kim, just as President Trump told the reporter pool, maybe it's the calm before the storm during his first administration here in the United States. So, this is a long answer to your question, and I acknowledge that. But fundamentally, getting the contextual background for what's actually going to happen as a result of this campaign sort of informs the time frame expectations, because again, President Trump has said 3 times this year that we're going to have a 1929 style depression prior to the November election. He's also said explicitly at least 1 time that he hopes the U.S. economy crashes before the election so that he's not another Herbert Hoover. We've also heard President Trump say twice that we're going to have a 100% chance of a terrorist attack here in the United States. And all of us digital warriors, and I would submit that a lot of the unawake or partially awake patriots are fundamentally aware that in such an event and in such an activation, you would have not only Arabic aligned assets and an Arabic narrative being painted for that, but you would also have the supportive underpinning of the intelligence community, and particularly the CCP and their agents and sleepers here in the United States as well. It's akin to a Red Dawn Rising meets 9/11 style moment. So understanding then that the timing between such an event domestically here in the United States and active militarized campaigns in the Pacific Theater are likely to be, if not immediately coinciding, very, very close together proximally. I think we can look at the health of the financial system worldwide, the changeover that's been happening with the devaluation and the de-dollarization of markets attached to the dollar over the last 18 to 24 months, really at this point, the success of turning off the petrodollar. All of it's very, very interconnected, but I think that we're looking at a period of really weeks at this point, Guru, not months, before we see militarized movement in the Pacific, provocative movement on behalf of the arms trade in the South Korean side of things, perhaps even escalation to nuclear rhetoric very quickly, and a coinciding financial emergency in the NATO Western world. Your microphone is muted, my friend. I apologize.
Sorry, mate. No, you're right. That's my fault. I'm trying to keep the car noise down in the background here. Saturday morning at the harbour, mate. There's a few redheads around. But yeah, look, interesting. I don't talk about this financials too much because I've never been able to get, look, I haven't got the time probably to actually go into it. And I've got one theory in life, SG, and that is seek ye the kingdom of God and all else will be handed to you. So I'm not one out there running around on, buying currencies and doing this and doing that. Have I bought a bond? Yeah, I have, because someone asked me to, okay, for $300. I thought it was a good bet, you know what I mean? And see what happens. You lose 300, you lose 300. You pick up 1,000, you pick up 1,000. That's the game. But I would like your comment on this, because what I have heard, and this gentleman, I'm not going to name him, but I do know him quite well from being in spaces and that with him, and I do know what his business is. Now, apparently just a week or two ago, there was a pretty large sort of deal done between China and Mexico. And in the background, it was done on the XRP platform. Now, I can only, this is what I got told, okay? But I do believe this gentleman, and this gentleman is right up in this sort of business. I'm going to tell you what his business is, but I know, but yeah. So what would you know about that, SG? Do you think that could be the little ripple, and pardon the pun, but the little ripple effect that we're looking for here? And are things starting to happen in the background with some sort of different currencies ready for this drop? As we've spoken about, we don't want to drop into the canyon. We just want to drop into the safety net. So with that little bit of information, if you didn't know it, what would you see coming from that, or what would your comments be?
Well, my comments on that, Guru, are going to tie back into some of the complexity of redefining worldwide market behavior without destroying the planet in the process. And that's really what we're living through right now. There's a Q drop for those out there that follow that entity. There's a Q drop that states, what if Russia and China are coordinating with POTUS to eliminate the NWO, the New World Order, Nazi World Order, whatever you want to call it? And I take that as a very interesting conveyance forward, because who are the three world leaders really in the last 4 years that have spawned off a completely new geopolitical direction for the entirety of the planet and all subdomains of the planet as well? That's Trump, President Putin, and President Xi of China. Now, I don't throw my endorsement behind Putin or Xi in any other sense except to say that if both of those gentlemen were presented with, during their meetings with President Trump, a plan or an attitude by which we could vest back control of the planet from globalist hegemonic entities and redistribute that balance more fairly and equitably and do all of our nations something good in the process, I can't imagine any one of those gentlemen turning it down. The CCP has had a bloodlust control of the Chinese population and all of the Chinese heritage and history for almost 100 years at this point. President Putin is no stranger to what the NATO Western world oligarchs and corrupticians are capable of, as he literally lived through the crashing of the Russian economy and the fragmenting of a number of territories that have always been ancestrally Russian, and yet that happened in the 1990s right in front of his very eyes. So looking at the motivation here and the deeply personal motivations, the selfish motivations that all of these individuals are likely to be acting with, that's the lens that I approach things like the question that you just asked, the behavior between Beijing and Mexico with regards to XRP and Ripple. It's not been less than 4 weeks ago that we saw the SEC defeated in court by XRP Ripple as it pertains to the definition of what XRP and Ripple is and is not in the currency world. And it was defined as not a security. So in other words, we have an infrastructural token here that has been now identified as an infrastructural pathway, a transient pathway for some sort of commercial value exchange. China has been working actively, really for the last 4 years, but going back a number of years now, on a Belt and Road initiative, which is the same sort of a spirit as the Great Silk Road of the days before. And the Great Silk Road, while it was built by the dynasties primarily out of China and stretched for a great deal across Central Asia and out into all the way really to Turkey and southeastern Europe in those days, it fundamentally provided the infrastructure which later allowed tremendous amounts of commerce to happen at a more free and fair level. And so if were we to see the CCP build out an infrastructure both digitally and physically to enhance supply chain distribution and commerce around the world, those activities would actually be beneficial if you're talking about simultaneously removing the dollar from the game board and also rebalancing and redistributing the amount of control and fairness when it pertains to trade. The CCP will fall just as the American deep state bureaucracy will fall, just as the London-based British Crown monarchy and their corruptitions in MI6 are going to fall. But if we have the infrastructure built out by their hands using their money, I say their money, it's our money, but repurposing our money in this particular day and time and forcing their effort and their energy into it just to steal it away from them, I think that there's something very sweet and symbolically significant with that. And I believe that's exactly what's happening with the build out of the digital trade infrastructure between Beijing and Mexico City.
Very interesting, because, I just thought that was, and people are asking me, can I reveal my source? Look, I probably could. The guy put it out public, but I will contact him first. He's in plenty of the spaces over there in America I run into or I go into. So yeah, I can certainly ask him and put that out there. But yeah, he was pretty calmly talking about what he'd been involved with and the deal that went down. And between China and Mexico, that does make, China's building most of their cars down there in Mexico. There's a lot going on, guys. So, we've got to look at these background things. And as I say, I do not get into financials. I never had, but I found that was a very, very interesting comment of a gentleman that I've known for quite a while through spaces now and spoken to quite a lot. And, do know what his business is, you know what I mean? Yeah, which is, sort of timber. Okay, but this deal was done, and it was done with the XRP, platform. So, yeah, I just thought that was of interest, and that could just give people that little bit of confidence that we are moving closer to something. We don't know what it is. Okay, maybe 9 people in the world do know what it is, like we're told, or Trump and a few others, but we don't, people. So again, we're up against this enemy who has never, ever, been beaten before. So they think that they've got the upper hand in everything. But what we're watching is sly moves in the background. We're watching Hollywood get emptied out. We've got all these mansions over there where people have just run away. We know the RICO laws must be in play. Now, can I tell you that RICO laws are definitely in play? No, I can't. But I can tell you from the environment that we see over in Hollywood and other places where mansions have just been left, with $1 million cars and, the plates were still on the table. It's as if people just walked out of there, and some of these have been named as mafia families, et cetera, et cetera. So this all adds up, to the background movement that we have got something going on, guys. Now Derek will come out with what he's got with the executive orders. We got SG doing the research that he's doing in a totally different area and a totally different way of doing his research, which I absolutely love. Then I got Jan Halper over here, who's our litmus paper, talking to Trump, working out where the people are as a psychologist. And as she said, she's just been called back in to do strategy meetings and that now. So again, as these people, these high profile people that we're talking to are getting pulled back in to do stuff, this shows the background movement. And I'm really excited about it. I can see what's coming, but the excitement that I've got, SG, is knowing that for once in our life, we have these guys on the back foot. We got them in the corner of the ropes. We know they got wonky knees, and we just got to pick our punches to actually take the opposition out. So very, very exciting times, I think. And we've all been working for this for a long time, SG. This has been 4 or 5 years coming. For some people, this has been a 20-year, a 30-year journey. For people like my producer, Kaz, who switched on and, as she says, went to the school of Alex Jones, has watched Alex Jones for the last 20-odd years. So we've got people at all different ascendancies coming in to this battle now. And what I'm saying to people is there is no time anymore, SG, to be sitting in the stands watching this game. There is no time to be sitting on a fence wondering about making a decision. Because if you sit on that fence, you are going to get rattled off that fence, and I think that you're going to end up dropping on the wrong side. So what I'm trying to say to people again is, let's take what we've got. Okay, what we've got is an opening to watch ourselves give a few good punches to these guys and watch them collapse. So I'm just hoping that Xi, Putin, and Trump, as I said, many years ago when I first got my break into this thing, that these guys need to be on side in the background, working against what we call the American corporation. I do believe that's happening. I do believe that we're not going to see a lot of what's happening. And maybe even when all this ticks over, are we going to be privy to all this internal information? Well, maybe not. Okay, but that's where our faith comes into this fight, guys. Why? Because we're fighting for the good Lord. He's running the battle, just like SG here today. You know what I mean? It's not our timing. SG couldn't get in the other day for some personal reasons. That's cool. This is God's timing. All right. And then this morning we have troubles trying to get in. Last night we couldn't get Jan in. We finally got her in without a camera. All these little things, as I see it, are part of God's plan. He's got this worked out, guys. All we got to do is move in and take our position. How do you see that being played out? And I know you've sort of covered this a little bit, but between now and February, now and November, I can see possibly another assassination on Trump's life. I don't know, but these guys have got to do something. They can't allow Trump to get back in. They can't allow what's happening in the courts. They can't allow the judge that we've just got over, coming out and saying that, the decision on Trump with his, his finances and that was all a load of crap. We've got Q-Star Kelly that I heard you speak about the other day, SG. I know I'm covering a couple of things here, but I'm trying to wrap a bit of stuff in and give you somewhere to go, whichever way you think's important. But, we've got Q-Star Kelly, from Fort Jackson, Jason Kelly, who's now been moved into another role. As you said, we've got the Rothschilds moving a 25-year asset a few years ago out of their actual, consortium of people and moving him over to here. So we've got all this background stuff going. We've seen it all happening for a fair few years now. All right. So, what do you see? What do you envisage? Another hit on Trump's life? I mean, these guys have got to get chaotic. We can see more school shootings coming, more false flags, more earthquakes, more HARP, more DARPA, more poisoning, more chemtrails, all this stuff. But what do you think a couple of those big black swan events are going to be to actually push us into November, SG?
With specificity, it's really difficult to say, but to keep with that metaphor you painted a moment ago, on the back foot in the ropes in the corner of the ring, at this point, to keep with that metaphor, Guru, when all of this kicked off, military forces under the first Trump administration, and it wasn't just in America, this was in more than 30 countries, essentially stepped in the background and took away their brass knuckles. And then they threw them back into the ring with We the People and then slowly started throwing water on us until we got up off the mat and started fighting again. At this point, we do now have them on the back foot on the ropes. And I think we have that same team of military forces, referees, if we can keep with it, or fight, mediators, if we can keep with the metaphor, that are standing on the sidelines and are just waiting for the appropriate time to step back in and finish it once and for all. And that's sort of been the nature of how this entire process has played out. We saw an aversion of the stolen election in 2016 by a sudden reversal of a number of the ballots that Hillary had actually paid more than $410 million cash for through a Chinese government-associated firm to flip the ballots. They were flipping 21.5% of the vote across the United States. And that was disappointed literally at the 11:59 mark as we went through that election cycle in November of 2016. We've seen the same attitude taken under the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, which gave teeth back to the civilian apparatus, put regulatory and a national emergency teeth back into U.S. code, U.S. law, and also sought to blend certain arenas with civilian and military authority jointly. We saw doctrine released from the Supreme Court just prior to Trump's election that helped us, iron out exactly that. So as we've moved forward from that point through these last 7 years, and we've come to the period that we're at now, we're waiting for them on the rings to pull out something from their pocket that the refs either allowed into the ring knowingly or did not anticipate to have, but are expecting that are going to come out, something like a gun, for example, in the boxing ring. If we see something happen along those lines, and we've sort of talked about what any number of those events could be in the next 8 weeks, we're going to see that same type of response that Trump hinted at on 6/9 of this year, which is the inverse of 9/6. It's just worth pointing that out for everyone. It's still 9/6 for me on the East Coast of the United States. It's very interesting that President Trump should tell us that the military, he hopes the military revolts at the voting booth. To revolt is to outright reject authority and then reclaim that authority, to fight against that authority. It's not simply a rejection of the jurisdiction, but it is an active campaign against the false pretense, against the false jurisdiction. A revolt is the base word for revolution. And so as we look at this going into November 5th, we have, I think, a series of events set out that are going to drive us towards November. They're going to be concentrated in finance. They're going to be concentrated in kinetic on-the-ground activity, probably in the United States of America in a very loud way, but I'm anticipating in most of Western Europe as well, potentially with Australia and New Zealand. I'd hate to say yes, but I can't say no to that either, Guru. But what I can say is combined force doctrine, which has been at play for the last 7 years at least, including an intermingling and an interweaving of our federal law enforcements across all of our national boundaries. Those two realities at play in the melting pot give us teeth in a way in that boxing ring that we've not had before. So we're just waiting for them to explode, to lose it in that corner of the ring as we continue to pummel on them and to attempt to pull out something which is fundamentally antithetical to everything that we're seeking to do here. And that's the point where all of us collectively together, I think both from the civilian side and from the militarized and law enforcement side, take our full teeth and claw to this enemy and remove them.
Okay, we got just a statement there. Trump's trial has been moved from September the 18th after the election. The date is now set for November the 26th. I didn't know that, but did you know that? Can you vet that for a start, SG? And if it's been moved to after the election on November the 26th, that's what happens. You know, we got all this military and that hanging around. We got National Guard in New York, apparently for the 18th or something, or, whether it be the deep state who got them in there. But it'll be interesting now if that date has been moved to see whether the National Guard hangs around. Do you have any inside information on what that National Guard is actually doing there in New York at the moment?
I can't corroborate the last part because I'm actually researching that actively, Guru. We've seen the National Guard out of New York activated in at least 3 separate fashions in the last 8 weeks, which is just very fascinating given the Trump sentencing date. And that's what's being referenced here is the Trump sentencing upcoming. It's been moved now from the 18th of September to the 26th of November, which is one day after the birthday of John F. Kennedy Jr. It's worth pointing that out, I think, for the symbolic significance of things. It's also 4 days after the anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963. The number 4 is significant. You have 4 cardinal directions, 4 corners of the earth as described by various texts. That's another discussion for another time, but the number 4 has always been about cosmic significance here in the world. So, I find it very interesting that we've got this movement. I think it's an irregular warfare tactic, quite frankly, to allow us greater movement under silence. Remember, Trump's rhetoric is one of the things that is continuing to drive, this awakening process in a very significant fashion, especially to the lethargic segment of the American population that is just having a hard time getting mentally off the couch. They've come to the table about corruption. They've come to the table about needing a national border, but they've not accepted that there's a greater coordination behind the corruption. They've not accepted that sexual deviancy is a common theme, or that secret societies, which are based primarily out of academia, really contribute to a significant fashion in how political pulpits are maneuvered. And I think we're working on that demographic very actively. I'm seeing an increasing number of posts on Twitter. And when I say increasing, I mean significantly increased volume of posts on Twitter that describe essentially something along the lines of, I wasn't with Trump all the way up until this time, but I'm finally with him. I finally see it. RFK Jr.'s accession to the Trump campaign, and that unification was just a deadly atom bomb in the narrative space. We've seen unity being returned to the American consciousness as a result of that. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts just on my feed alone on X describing conversion of belief, conversion of mission, combination of mission, right? We've seen that put out, Make America Great and Healthy Again. So, I know that this is a long answer to the overall question here about the Trump sentencing, but the Trump sentencing movement, I think, is fundamentally to allow us to continue to drive home unification over division. And, I'm not one to speak from a veteran standpoint. I don't really have a lot of meaningful exposure in that arena, but I have heard from numerous veterans across all branches of service, both in America and beyond, that one of the greatest feelings of accomplishment is the ability of a unit to unify over and above significant or constant agitation, typically provided by a drill sergeant or a drill instructor. It's a very proud moment in the life of everyone that serves in the armed forces of the Western world nations, being able to find the unity, the cohesiveness, and the teamwork, even despite the resistance and the obstruction. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now. And if I can keep with that metaphor, Dave, we're moving into a period where basic training is going to be over. And we, the people, will be expected to step into community levers of power, to give affidavits, to give accounts and testimonies, to provide thorough detail of things that happened in our neck of the woods, in our communities, which doctors were, potentially confused, which ones were malevolent, which ones were obviously financially co-opted, which ones might be able to come back and say that they didn't fully know and understand. We, the people, are going to be an integral part of how we adjudicate all of this moving forward. And I know that that's, again, that's sort of a long answer for the question regarding the Trump sentencing, but fundamentally we're ill-equipped, and we're ill-prepared to step into that level of power and responsibility until we achieve that unity across multiple consciousness demographics.
Okay, and the big one for that, I would say, of late, and I just want to know your feelings on this, is obviously, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK and Trump. Now, this is a huge alliance that has come together. Now, RFK is all over the vaccines, the poisoning, the chemtrails, the this, the that, the other. Strategic move. It was always going to happen. Is that what you're going to, this wasn't just an off the cuff thing where RF's gone, okay, I'll just head over to Trump now. And, nah, all by design again, I think, guys, 5G chess. The people are waking up to what RFK is saying, because when you have a Democrat jump over here, you know what I mean, and jump into what we're going to call the uni party at the moment, which is just get the people unified and get our country back, or all our countries back. RFK is going to be a big nudge here for the people that are asleep when he's talking about all this stuff, because obviously people are now getting interested in the debate as we move further into this election period, and we get into more obviously deep state programming and truth coming out from these three individuals plus more. So again, what do you see RFK's main job now? Is it to concentrate on getting into second spot with Trump? Is it to concentrate on exposing the chemtrails, the vaccines, the autism, and all the things that RFK has been doing for a long, long time? Where do you see his processes, SG, and how do you see him being used?
We could go a couple of different directions with Bobby Kennedy. We've seen President Trump talk pretty actively about, his exposure to the health world. And Bobby Kennedy actually came out himself and said that it was the childhood disease epidemic that fundamentally compelled him and Trump to get together. It was their agreement on solving that solution, because it's a national crisis. And really, it's a crisis of generational proportion. We could spend a whole show just talking about that.
Yep.
But, fundamentally, I think his role, Guru, is going to be, associated with exposing the intelligence community. And I think it's going to be exposing the intelligence community in the machinations of public health. And I think that's actually going to end up overlapping into exposure of the intelligence community in what are called soft assassination attempts, which is a slow burn assassination. You poison someone silently rather than aggressively exterminating them, in a public fashion, an overt fashion. So, looking at his history, the Kennedy name means something, obviously, and that's not lost on your audience out there. But the fact that we're seeing the alignment of the Kennedy name with the Trump camp, which I think is essentially creating a new political axis here in the United States of America for our history books. And we tend to be a country here in America. We love our drama. We tend to be a country of, volleying and sort of vacillating back and forth along our axes, even the ones that do us great benefit and, spread tremendous amounts of wealth, prosperity, and freedom. So when we look at that duality, I think that's also at play here. It's very interesting that we have President Trump just today at the Fraternal Order of Police meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina, USA, referencing that Kennedy was going to look after everybody's health and especially women's health, looking at the procreative assaults that have been enacted against our feminine, and our females out there in this world. or feminine side of the human nature is what I'm trying to say. It's really a significant, cosmic level and spiritual level crime that's been committed there. And I find it very, appropriate that RFK, who is the nephew of President Kennedy and the son of RFK Sr., who was, attempting also to expose the CIA's operations and influence operations in government. This is the individual who is very likely going to end up exposing the intelligence community for their weaponization of biological warfare.
Okay, and we've just had a few comments there. Now, we know a few states over there in America are starting to get onto this chemtrail, and they're starting to stop them over there. What we're having over here, they've ramped it up a lot. They're really hitting us hard. And Tony's put in a question there, how do we detox when these guys just keep spraying chemtrails on us every day? And that's a great question. Our environment is poisoned. Our clothing is poisoned. Our food is poisoned. Our water is poisoned. Our air is poisoned. Our kids are being poisoned. So, a great question, Tony. How do we do that? Well, there's a couple of ways we can. And number one is we need to come together and stop the spraying, because now what they're doing here at SG is we've got another fimranol or something that they're spraying. I think I've got that nearly correct. And what it's for is fire ants, FG. So what they're doing is they're walking into properties now and they're going, you could have fire ants. We're going to put a drone up and we're going to spray your property with these granules. Now, I've exposed the other night on a show just who these people are, and this is the police commissioner in Queensland's husband, who has the sole contract to bring in this poison, right, and start poisoning our livestock and stuff like that. Now, they're not really going for fire ants. What they're going for is the waterways, the tanks on your house, the stock that you may have on your grounds. And this is another poisoning effect. So, whilst we're all trying to do the right thing in here in Australia and we're trying to detox and get these heavy metals and that out of our body, yeah, Tone, we're right up against it, mate, because these guys are coming at will. They're saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that. They don't really care about trespass signs. They're putting drones up and they're doing whatever they want. They're picking the properties and they're going for it. So, again, we're seeing movement in the USA where you are, and they're starting to actually, stop these chemtrails in certain states. Can you see that being a big flow-on effect? And then how do we get that flow-on effect to countries like us, Britain, Canada? If the Americans get to put a handle on this, are they going to push all their resources our way, SG, or are we going to get that ripple effect again that says, okay, stop? Or is this up to a number of the people again? We get to the magic number, we stand out the front, we say no longer, and we put it to a halt. But this is a big issue to the Australian people. We are getting poisoned upon poisoned upon poison. So your comment on that?
My comment, Guru, is that I'm right there with you in many regards. Just the other day, they sprayed lattice work in the sky above my own community, and it was unusually heavy, surprisingly heavy, and painfully obvious. Actual squares, hard lines drawn in the sky like grid work. Very much sort of putting it in your face attitude and mentality. With respect to stopping them, I think all of us know that they are going to stop. This is not something that we, the people, are simply going to just allow moving forward. We're now aware of it. We can see it. We know that it's going on. Inevitably, this is going to change. And this comes a little bit back to Bobby Kennedy. I tracked a post that Bobby Kennedy made online, which went, I think for him, unexpectedly viral. And that was a comment he made in respect to a post that was shared on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, regarding a whistleblower that used to fly the chemtrail tankers. And this whistleblower termed these aircraft as tanker terminators because of the content and the cargo payload that was being delivered. RFK's official account, from his official account, responded, "We are going to stop this crime." This falls directly under public health, right? And we've seen public health emergencies, not just since COVID, but going back 6 decades. Fundamentally, it's been public health-based emergencies that have allowed for extraordinary police state powers inside not only the United States, but most of the NATO world and former Commonwealth realms. So when we look at our intermingling from a law enforcement perspective over the last 7 years, joint task forces that exist between U.S. federal law enforcement, for example, and U.S. military organizations with other military organizations, And then we also appreciate the fact that we are linked in a commercial fashion, in a significant enterprise and retail landscape fashion, in other words, economic fashion. I think it's nigh impossible to suggest that we would get a handle on this issue in one of those nations and not simultaneously export that handle to all of those nations under their own laws, regulations, and according to the referendums from their people. I think in this particular issue, one of the first things that will be drawn out by RFK, or potentially a team that RFK helps assemble and advise, is just who is responsible for these trails. And I think we're going to learn that a significant amount of U.S. military commanders are bribed up to the hilt and blackmailed even further to allow these types of missions to occur and to sign agreements which discuss that they will not share the contents of the mission because they're considered national security risks. I think that this particular issue, Guru, is one of the touchier subjects out there because it's on display for everyone to see. We've seen rumors online for 3 years now saying that some of these chemtrails are good, some of them are bad. I've had reports from various states here in the United States where people say that they've completely changed the atmosphere in good ways, and I've also heard the opposite. So I think a lot of that ties back to that irregular war that's playing out inside the U.S. Pentagon. We had a significant level of flag officer command in the United States military that were controlled by foreign oligarchs and international interests, not domestic interests, and certainly they would not have had a problem sparking off a second U.S. Civil War by utilizing the arsenal under their command when the troops and the personnel below them are simply not allowed to question orders, right? They have to follow orders. So I think when we get a better handle on that and we get individuals in place publicly here in the next administration to begin discussing that and talking about that, we're going to get a very quick cessation of that activity and an explanation that is likely going to cause us to search a little bit deeper under the hood. You are on mute, my friend.
Yeah, I'm on mute. Yeah, I really think we need to because, from what I can see, the unvaccinated that they missed out, this is why they're coming so hard at us in other areas, you know what I mean? And they need for the intranet of things and the 5G and the 6G, which have nothing to do with your phones. As I've said to you guys, this is all, modern warfare. That's what it's been put into place for. And what they want to do is turn this on and have all these nanobots and have this graphene oxide and, all the rest of the stuff that they're punching out into us through our food systems, our water systems, our spraying, this, that, and the other, to get us all hooked up to that intranet of things. So, again, it's a personal responsibility now to actually clean up your environment that you live in and clean yourself up. And I say that again, why? Because the good Lord, he told us to endure and overcome. He's got the win in this, but we are to endure and overcome. And why are we meant to do that? In my book, I'll tell you, because the thing that we perish from is a lack of knowledge. And that's what the good Lord said. He didn't say we'd perish from sin or we'd perish from, giving your mate a backhander across the back of the head because he can't open his eyes to see what's going on out there. We would perish from a lack of knowledge. Now, what we're gaining now is knowledge, guys. Okay, knowledge. We are gaining more and more knowledge every day. We had knowledge 3 years ago that we were confident enough to put out there, that we are now seeing the results of 3 years ago. And now here it is. We're getting all the studies. We're getting the white papers. We're getting this. We're getting that. So again, we're learning knowledge, right? And knowledge is the thing that's going to get us through here. So again, it's back to the people. We need to educate ourselves. We need to get the knowledge in which we need to act. Now, this is a hard thing because here in Australia, we got a bunch of muppets that are running this country that do not give two craps about the people. They don't care about what's going on. All they're interested in, like Bill Shorten the other day, is leaving politics, going to his $1.8 million a year job with the University of Canberra and slipping off into the sunset. Well, I'd like you to just finish the show up on what do you think to these people? We've got these people who are absolutely, blatantly in our face now, like just laughing at us over here, SG. They are laughing, mate. They do not care. They're signed up to the New World Order. We all know it. We're watching it in England. We're watching it in Canada. We're watching it over there in the States. but more New Zealand, Australia. These guys have just got their ears pinned back. They see nothing except the money, the blackmail, and the things that they've been put into. So these Muppet leaders, they're sitting around the world. Surely by the time we start to walk into this election, just for the sake of the Australian people, do you see us bringing these guys down? Do you see the executive orders 13818, 13848, and the RICO laws having a big effect on our Australian politicians here?
I think that effect is absolutely coming, but it is likely to be reverberative in nature. I'm anticipating that a lot of these original events that are likely to come to the United States of America here very shortly, Guru, are going to have a sort of like a drop in the pond effect, but dropping a boulder into the pond, not just simply a drop of water. How that reverberates around the rest of the world, that is truly difficult to try and predict accurately. But what I can say is the general spirit of things has been surrounded around serious human rights abuses and corruption. And that applies not only to the military component and the militarized operations, but even the federal operations, where our two federal agencies, both your Australian Federal Police and our FBI, as well as our DHS, have been actively involved in joint force training and joint force active operations, interdicting everything from child trafficking to sexual trafficking for profit sales online. Arms dealing and smuggling was another one that came out of that partnership just a few months ago. So looking at how this happens here in the United States, it's not beyond my expectation at all that we should see the exportation of that same model, that same addressing of the large-scale globalist co-opting of our institutions and our government in a significantly similar fashion across all of what we would call our NATO partners. And I'm utilizing that with air quotes. It's ironic that the arrangements they set for themselves and the cooperative infrastructure that they built for themselves, both in the background and in the foreground, are soon to come into play, I think, with the actual destruction and the dethroning of their power structure forever. So I wish I had a better time frame for you, but I'm looking at, essentially November as really kicking this party off, maybe even October as kicking this party off in a very significant public-facing way. And I think that's going to move us through the winter of 2024, 2025, the likes of which the world has never seen before.
Well, yeah, we're in a place that the likes of the world has never seen before. And we'll finish this up with some closing statements, SG. And thank you once again for your time, mate. We really appreciate it. We'll get this done again soon. It's been a good break, actually, you come back and now, get an update on your research and where you're looking. But what I want to say to people for my closing comment, and then I'll let you go, SG, and we'll finish it up, is that, guys, we've been here, as I said, some people for 20 years, some people for 40 years. Okay, they knew about this. They read the environment. Okay, but most of us have been here for 4 or 5 years. And what I want to say to you guys is that, as I said before, this enemy has never lost. They've never tasted defeat. But here we have a team, a worldwide team, like you saw with Jim Ferguson last night and Jan Halper, different people doing different things to bring unity around the world. So we have this worldwide team. We've been going for a long time, guys. A lot of people are getting sick. A lot of people are getting tired. All right. But this is the time that we've got to really endure and overcome and hang in there. All right. Because you are so close to the victory that it is not funny. Now, it doesn't get darker before the dawn yet. And we haven't got to the dawn yet, because the dawn is the time when Trump comes back in as our, major man. God leads it. Okay. But then we start to get this rectification worldwide that we're looking for. So again, my words to you closing, guys, on this show is look how far you've come. Have a look behind you. Look at what you've been through. Look at the persecution, the family, ripped down, the devil coming into our kids, grooming our kids, putting all this bullshit pornography in our schools. You guys have fought, you have stopped things, and you've never stopped fighting. So again, my congratulations is to you guys out there. All right, SG and I can sit here on a screen all day and talk to you and give you the information that we know is out there. But you guys have to make a decision, and you have made it. All right. And we are winning this thing. We are winning it hands down, but that means that the enemy is going to get very, very desperate, guys. So between now and October, November, we got to have our head on a swivel. We're going to see a lot more shit coming our way. Okay, so yeah, my words to you are just to keep you going. All right, we're nearly there, guys. You're in the home straight. You can see that finish line down there, but you can feel those feet behind you. And we're running down that home straight now, and we just want to get the win, and we're going to get the win. But behind us and coming in from all flanks is people trying to take us out. They're trying to tip us over, trip us over. They're trying to put another speed bump, another hurdle in front of us, one that we didn't realize was there, that we're going to have to move our footsteps and renegotiate to be able to make that jump. So I just want to thank you all, guys, because we are getting close. All right. It's going to be a little bit yet, and it's going to be a tough time. But you're coming together worldwide, and your, tenacity that you've actually fought this fight with guys in the background is what's got us there. So, I just like to say worldwide, because this will go out worldwide. We know that it'll get picked up by a few people and reshared every time SG's on a show. That's what happens. So, I just want to thank everyone around the world. Seriously, all you patriots, because we are the 3%er, guys. And as we know, we were talking to Jim about it last night. 3% of the population is enough to make the change. All right. We got 30% that's never, ever going to see it. But it only takes that 3%. And I think if we can get 3% in each country, we've probably got now, I think we're getting very close to it. Well, then we know that the time to really step in, have them on the ropes, give them a few good hits, all right, and watch their knees crumble. And what an exciting time it is, guys. And that's what we're going to be seeing over the next few months. We're going to be seeing punches landed, and we're going to be seeing knees crumbling, and we're going to actually see a breakthrough in this veil and this environment that we've been trapped in for so many, many years, And this goes back thousands of years, guys. Like I said, they've never lost. They've never tasted defeat. So you want to wrap it up, SG? Again, thank you very much for your time, mate. We really appreciate it here. And, we know you're busy. We know everyone's busy at this time. But, just give the Australian people your thoughts on them. And, maybe worldwide, our Patriot movement, because I think we've just been an absolutely brilliant team. Have we got more players to come on yet? We certainly have. But as those players come onto the field, I think we've got the positions that they need to be put into to keep going. And we got young ones waking up all the time. The more we are seeing so many young kids come out, the Gen Zs on TikTok and that now, SG. It just warms my heart, mate, to see that these young people are actually waking up and picking up that something's wrong, and they're actually getting a voice now. The more podcasters we got out there, guys, the better this is. All right, I'm not one to sit here and go, oh, no, don't go and take Guru 7 o'clock. I don't care. Really, I don't care. The more people we get podcasting, the more people we get out there sending out a message, the more people we get to. Everybody has a different audience. So I'll finish it there. SG, give it a wrap up. And again, thank you very much, sir.
Dave, that's difficult to follow, my friend. But, fundamentally, you said they've never lost before. They've never tasted defeat. They've never faced a digital army worldwide before either. The irony is that they set up something for our extinction, and it's going to be their extinction. We do get there. This process has been years in the making. It's been decades in the planning. We are appointed to handle this component part of the mission, which is to awaken our brother and sister next to us and take back our civilian lawful jurisdictions of authority. I think all of us would prefer to keep that in the civilian as much as we possibly can, which is why I believe a great deal of this has been, very covert in the background from a military standpoint. Q tells us more than 80% has been covert, just because only 20% of overt operations will even be necessary to drive home the point of public justice and awakening. And that informs us as to how big the Hydra really has been. We are overtaking them for the first time in a worldwide fashion. They no longer have anywhere to hide. No island is safe. The eye in the sky sees all. And the citizen journalists out there, podcasters, reporters, people on the ground, even just in their community gas stations, are making it impossible to hide criminality. I'm excited for the world that I'm going to leave my little one. It does take patience. It does take tenacity, but we're chosen for this time. And I, for one, am not stepping back.
Amen. All right. Thank you very much again, SG. Thank you to the audience that's in here. Share it out everywhere, guys. Last night's program you can't even get to on Facebook. I don't think we'll be on Facebook for very much longer, guys. I think they're about to come down very, very hard on us. So do your thing, guys. Do your thing. Keep your conversation going. Keep talking in the coffee shop lines. As I said, I was trying to jokingly, run Jacob Bode out of brochures. Well, guess what, guys? We've done it. They got stickers left, but not many brochures. So again, well done to you Australian people, right? You've been on the websites, you've been, asking for the material, and obviously that material is getting out to the public. It's going on cars, it's going in letterboxes, and you are the thing that is waking up the Australian people. So again, SG, thank you. Go and enjoy your Friday. To the rest of you, it's our weekend, guys. Get out and enjoy it. Get out, make a conversation, be a difference. You are the climate change, people. You are the climate change that they don't want. You are changing the climate of the world, one person by one person by one person. So thank you again. Have a great weekend, people.